The history of beer goes back to the dawn of human civilization. This popular alcoholic drink appeared in the Neolithic, at the same time as bread, if not earlier, during the agricultural revolution, which set mankind on the path towards modernity through the adoption of farming and the creation of the first settlements. Unsurprisingly, ancient beer was originally made from grain. Hops only became part of the recipe thousands of years later, during the Middle Ages. The Babylonians and Egyptians had dozens of recipes for beer, and pharaohs were buried with jars filled with the tasty brew. Even workers were paid in beer. During the Middle Ages, beer spread all over Europe, and beer making became one of the most important industries on the continent. After the Industrial Revolution, it went global, turning into a 20th century behemoth. Today, beer is the third most widely consumed drink, second only to water and tea. 8 facts you didn't know about beer. 1. The history of beer begins at the dawn of civilization. The history of beer is inseparable from the history of the human race. In fact, it is one of mankind's oldest beverages. The popular fermented drink was not invented but discovered. History is not sure of the exact date or even the culture. However, it is known that the discovery of beer coincided with the end of the last ice age around 10,000 BCE. 2. Beer was an early symbol of friendship. Sumerian depictions of two people drinking through straws from a shared vessel suggests another important role of beer among the ancients: its social function. 3. Beer was a currency. The sedentary way of life and the surplus of cereal grains, barley and wheat, freed a small fraction of the population from the need to work in the fields, allowing for the emergence of highly specialized professions: priests, administrators, and scribes. One of their main tasks was to collect taxes, paid in grain and other goods, and their process solid and liquid forms, bread and beer. This made beer more than just a simple foodstuff. 4. Beer was divine. Besides its economic and social value, ancient beer also had divine status. Partly this was due to the brew being a cornerstone of people's diets. In addition, the ancients considered beer a safer alternative to water, as nearby rivers and canals could often become contaminated by animal waste. 5. The ancient history of beer, beloved by Egyptians, but not Greeks and Romans. The ancient Egyptians, too, had a dedicated goddess of beer and drunkenness, Hathor. Actually, few early civilizations loved their beer as much as the society living along the Nile Valley. Even the children were allowed to drink beer. Egyptian records mention at least 17 kinds of beer, some of them referred to in poetic terms that remind us of advertising slogans such as the beautiful and good, the heavenly, the joybringer, the plentiful, and the fermented. The same applied to the beers used in religious ceremonies. However, the ancient Greeks and Romans did not share the Egyptian taste for beer, preferring wine instead. 6. Beer is a medieval success story. The arrival of the Middle Ages revived Europe's interest in beer. Surprisingly, Christianity was one of the main culprits, primarily due to the monks who modernized the brewing process, adding hops. As a result, medieval monasteries, places of frugal life and asceticism, became the first European breweries. 7. Bavaria introduced the golden standard for beer. For centuries, the basic way to make beer was to boil malted barley with water and let it ferment. Sometimes, natural yeast did the vital work, but generally, the brewers would add yeast to speed up the process. The resulting mix would then be flavored with a mixture of various herbs. Adding hops improved the chances that the beer would not spoil, but the large variety of recipes continued to make beer making difficult. This all changed in the 16th century when to standardize beer production, the Duke of Bavaria, Wilhelm IV, introduced the Reinheitsgebot, or beer purity law, in 1516. The Reinheitsgebot essentially removed everything but water, hops, and barley from the list of acceptable brewing ingredients. Interestingly, the law also removed yeast from the recipe, which was only added back in 1857, after Louis Pasteur discovered yeast's role in fermentation. The Reinheitsgebot remained law for the next 471 years and was repealed only in 1987. However, while brewers respected the law in Germany, Holland, and Belgium, French brewers continued to use various herbs, spices, and fruits to add extra flavor to their beer. 8. The War on Beer, the history of beer in modern times. Despite its sky-high popularity in the medieval and early modern period, and the spread of breweries and pubs all over Europe, beer continued to encounter resistance in its mission to take over the world. During the 18th century's Enlightenment, Europe tried to restrict alcohol, focusing instead on coffee and tea. Yet, beer continued to rise in popularity, and in 1765, the invention of the steam engine sparked the Industrial Revolution and, by extension, industrialized the beer brewing process. In addition, the introduction of the thermometer and hydrometer was a watershed moment in the history of beer, increasing beer-making efficiency. The most dangerous blow to the history of beer came in the 1920s, during the Prohibition era in the United States. Although George Washington owned a brewery and Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence in a pub, the land of the free declared war on beer and other alcohol, making its consumption illegal. Prohibition, which ended in 1933, had an unintended effect. It introduced people to watered-down beer, with a lighter flavor profile, present even today, especially among mass-marketed beers. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for this channel. Do you also have a crazy story tip? Let us know in the comments.